Hi everyone, how are you? I hope you're all well. This is Colin Duthie here. You probably don't know me. I'm affectionately known as the fat one-legged bloke that lives in Scotland. But I've been very, very privileged today to be given the opportunity to speak at the expos, the Abilities Expos, and also a massive big shout out and thank you to Friendly Shoes. They've been incredible. I've only met them over a month ago, but it's been fantastic to hear about them. Today, I've been asked to give a little talk, if you like, or a chat about a bit about me, a bit about my story, where I've come from, etc., and where I am today. To give you a background, I'm 57 years old, chronologically. Technically, in my mind, I'm still only 18. However, chronologically, I'm 57. I'm married to Julie, and I've got two sons, Ian and Stuart. Julie and I have been married for 31 years. My two sons are 28 and 29. Believe it or not, there's only 11 months between them. Work that one out. And of course, I got the blame for that. My wife was sleeping, so I believe. So anyway, we've got these two sons. They're incredible. I've simply just retired recently. I was a sports development officer for additional support. So my job entailed looking after helping children and adults with disabilities and additional support to help them to get involved in sport and things of that nature. And that was an absolute privilege. I did that from 2003 to 2019, where I sadly had to retire because of my health. However, no biggie. And I think for me to kind of fill you in on my background and where I am, I'm afraid I need to take you back quite a while. I won't do it on a daily basis, but I need to take you back to sort of 1984, specifically the 4th of October, 1984. And that's when my life changed forever and changed for the worse in some ways, changed for the better in other ways. I was 20 years old. I was a young, fit, healthy guy. I was a biker, and actually I had an afro, massive head of hair. But I was a biker. In fact, I would go as far as to say I was the guy that would turn up to tap the door of your house to say, is your daughter coming out? And you'd be like, not a hope, not a chance that you get out with my daughter, because I was a big, hairy biker. So I lived an absolutely normal life up until the 4th of October. Unfortunately, with life, as everyone here knows, there's always a story. There's always a story. My story started at round about 8:32 p.m. when we were traveling round a roundabout, or a junction, if you like, in the States, a junction. Unfortunately, a chap in a truck wasn't watching, and he rammed right into the back of the motorcycle. That caused my friend to go up over the Armco and land in the grass, and I went forward and landed in the road. I was completely uninjured. I literally had bruises. But when I came to a halt, I sat up, facing forward, thinking, OMG, I've survived, I'm fine. And then I looked over my shoulder and the lorry was still coming. So I braced myself, couldn't move, and he hit me with his bumper. And I went right under the front of it. Went underneath. I won't go into this in too great a detail, not because it worries me, it's not very pleasant. But basically what happened is I went under the bumper, my right leg got trapped in the exhaust system and dragged me along to it, pretty much snapped off. And then when I came and fell off onto the ground, I rolled to the outside. And in doing so, he ran over me with the rest of the wheels. You'd think it can't get any worse than that, but it did. So by this point, I was completely conscious, lying under the lorry, because I was actually an athlete. I ran for Scotland as an athlete. I was a very good sprinter. And I'm lying under the lorry on my chest, couldn't move at all. And I remember the driver, jumping out of the cab shouting, where is the lad? Where's that boy? Where is he? Somebody else shouting, he's under the lorry. So what did he do? He jumped back in the cab. He missed first gear, hit reverse gear, and reversed over my arm. Smashed my arm. So this is the fun bit, by the way. It gets worse later. I'm only kidding. So what happened was I was under this lorry in a bad way. To cut a long story short, I had a cardiac arrest and died under the lorry. I had a phenomenal fireman, a rescue service guy, who kept his hand in my head, kept his hand like that in my head, kept me still, and he wouldn't leave that lorry, that truck, until I was out. So they tipped the lorry onto its side, and I basically was dragged out from under it. Taken to accident and emergency, whereby I spent another couple of days in there. Tried to keep me alive. I had another cardiac arrest. They couldn't do a great deal for me at that point, so I ended up going into a coma. I was like that for a month. Now, it just so happens I was in hospital for well over a year. I was back, remember, this is 1984, long time ago. So I was pretty, so they don't have the technology then that they do now. So I'm lying in my hospital bed, feeling sorry for myself, etc. I'm waking up, and then all of a sudden, my first conversation with a consultant, and this is really profound. This consultant comes up to me and he says, Colin, we're glad you're awake, but we need you to make a decision. And I was like, okay, right, what is it? The decision was this. We've got good news and bad news. We can save your life, but to do that, we're going to have to amputate your right leg. I said, how long do I have? He said, you've literally got an hour. How long do you think it would take somebody to make that decision? A couple of seconds, you would think, because you'd be like, wait a minute, either die or have your leg taken off. Oh, I'd rather have my leg taken off. It took me nearly 6 hours, and I nearly died. And why? I nearly died because I did not want to live without a leg. I'm a good-looking guy, and I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I can't live like this. So I wanted to die. I wanted to give up. But what kept me alive? The same thing that kept me alive then keeps me alive today. And that's family and friends, community. My family and friends are all positive-minded people who are always trying to do the right thing. And my father and my mum and dad and my wife were like, you've got to come through this, Colin, please. So I did the operation, had my leg taken off, and that was fundamental. But can I tell you something? Here's an interesting moment. So I went for the operation, came out of the operation, woke up and thought to myself, I wonder if they took my leg off. So I'm looking down at my feet, and there was a cage with a cover over it where my legs were. And I thought, if I can move my feet, I'll be fine. So I wiggled my left foot toes and I thought, oh my goodness, I've got that. That's great. Went to do that in my right. Guess what? I was able to move my toes. I was like, oh my, I still got my leg. And I pulled off the sheet. Oh my God, I've got my leg. And I can't tell you, as a 20-year-old man looking down and seeing the sheet just above where my hip is, the sheet go flat, and see there was no leg, that absolutely knocked me for 6. I went into a spiral. It was unbelievable. But I was in hospital and I was lucky to be there. So I had everybody around about me, and they did wonderful work to help me. And as I say, after a year or so, I got out of hospital. That was back in 1984. So I was in hospital for over a year. 1985, 86 was, I would say, not bad. I was reasonably surviving. But a couple of things happened to me, one of which, around about 1987, was when my wife and my family were trying to help me. My mental health wasn't good, and I had to think of a way out. So I started swimming. I thought swimming will help, and I was quite comfortable with it. So one day I was in the swimming pool, swimming a mile, a couple of kilometers, swimming up and down as I did most days, perfectly fine. And then this day I decided to finish, and I was sitting in the edge of the pool, happily. And at this point, a lady in the pool, I saw to the left of me, a lady in the water, maybe about 30 years old or something, came walking up to me whilst I sat on the edge of the pool. And this is what she said: "Excuse me, is there any chance you could go back into the water? It's just the way you look is upsetting my daughter." That put me into an even deeper spiral. And I ended up in a psychiatric hospital. To this day, that lady has no idea that that happened to me. It's incredible. So I don't know if you have this expression all over the world, but we do in Scotland: sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. I don't believe that. That lady to this day has no idea that she put me in a psychiatric environment. And I spent 6 months there. But whilst I was in there, I learned a few things. One of the most important things that I learned is about attitude and perception. The attitude of others and the attitude of self. And that's where I learned at that time that what you believe yourself makes a difference in the world. You can change your life to help others change theirs. And so in 1987, round about then, that's when I started doing my charity work, if you like, my voluntary work. And to this day, I'm still doing it. And what I thought I would like to do is give you an indication of how my voluntary work and how my charity work helped change my life, and how it can do the same for you if you choose to do so, to get involved in your community, to work with people in your community. I started working with a charity called the Riding for Disabled Association back in 1984, really, 1994. And it was for therapy. It was just for therapy, to help me get more active. And I was getting better and better and better at riding horses. I was getting better and better mentally, feeling great, actually. And my son came into me one day, after I'd been doing it for a year, and my son came into me one day. I was writing an article for a magazine. And this particular bit, they were asking, how do you ride a horse with one leg? I don't mean a horse with one leg, by the way. I mean me on a horse with one leg. You know what I mean? So I'm on the horse with one leg. And the question was, how do you ride a horse with a disability, Mr. Duthie? So I'm sitting in this very room, and I shouted through to my wife, Julie, how do I explain this to them about my disability? My son, who was 10, Ian, was standing beside me, and he's looking at me, just looking. And Julie explained what she thought, and I did what I did. Attitude and perception. My 10-year-old son came up to me and said, Dad, can I ask you a question? I said, sure, son. What is it? He said, do you have a disability? Do you understand that? The reason why he asked that is because he'd never seen that in me. He'd always known me for that 10 years since the crash as somebody becoming really active, really vocal, really quite a pain in the ass, frankly. You know, happy to go out there and be myself. And the charity work and everything that I did is basically what helped me to give me the confidence to go out into the world and be myself. You know, there's no point trying to be anybody else because they're all taken. You can only be you, regardless of what you like, what you like. And I also believe this, I genuinely believe this. Body parts don't make a person. You know, they're just attributes that you have. It's about your heart and your soul. That's what makes you a person. So I ended up starting my voluntary work. I'm just going to give you a few examples of how voluntary work and charitable work and working in that environment helps you to understand yourself better by helping others. So back in 1994, this is really quite, I don't like saying the word inspirational because that's quite pompous, but I started with the Riding for Disabled Association in 1994 for therapy, to learn how to ride horses, to learn how to teach me to walk again because I couldn't walk. And one day, I was in the Riding for Disabled Association, my very first day. I turned up at this place. I was petrified. I was round about 6.5, 7 stone in weight. I wasn't very well. I was in a wheelchair. I had my leg missing. and I was getting wheeled up this ramp by my wife. And this young girl with Down syndrome stood right in front of me, but 10 years old. And she's looking at me. She's got her hands in her hips, and she's like, "What happened to you? Where's your leg?" And I was like, oh, I don't know where my leg is, but what have you done with it? And I don't know. But what happened to you? I was like, and I thought, I'll tell her the truth. I get ran over by a truck. You get ran over by a truck? I was like, yeah, I did. And she's like, that must have hurt. And I'm like, hell yeah, it did a bit. And she's like, okay, thank you, bye. I was like, what? That's it. She'd not want to hear anything. I couldn't believe it. She wasn't finished. 10 minutes later, she came back. I'm 36 years down the line, and nobody's ever asked me this question again. She came back up to me and she said, "Mr. Duthie, can I ask you another question?" I said, "Of course. What would you like to know?" She said, "What colour was the lorry?" What the actual attitude and perception. That little girl had no interest whatsoever in me having one leg. That went past her. She wasn't caring about that. She only wanted to know what colour the colour of the lorry was, the truck. So I thought that was quite an interesting moment for me, and it actually changed the way in which I thought about myself and my condition and my situation. Later on, say about a year later, I'm getting really fit and healthy, but I've got bad mental health, not good mental health. So in 1995, my wife says to me, "You really need to," we have the expression here, "you need a kick up the arse," which basically means you need to get up and you need to get moving. And I had no idea how to do it. So I'll never forget this. It was a Sunday afternoon. Julie came into her bedroom and threw a leaflet at me. And I was like, "What's this?" And it was a leaflet. I picked this leaflet up and it said, "The Israel Experience." I was like, wow, we're going to Israel on a holiday. Wow, great. Then I read the second paragraph, 250-mile cycle ride through Israel. I'm shouting, Julie, I can't believe you would do this to me. Why would you do this? And Julie came in to me and said, "Colin, I've known you since I was 9 years old, since you were 11. And since then, nothing has ever beaten you. Find a way of doing it." So what I did was I found a wheelchair in America called a Shadow Mach 3. Never forget, only an American wheelchair would be called Shadow Mach 3. It was fantastic. I used that chair and I cycled 250 odd miles in 5 days and through Israel. It was an absolutely incredible thing. 100 people in bicycles and one fat-legged bloke in a wheelchair. And it was incredible. But I want to tell you a quick thing about that. Amazingly, when I was in Israel, I was in Jericho and we were helping some children get food and juice, fizzy juice, etc. And I ended up with this box, which I gave out to all the children, of fizzy juice and bread and goodness knows what. And they kind of looked to me as some kind of special guy. And I don't know what happened. But what happened was that got through the whole town, that there's a guy in a wheelchair with a leg missing who is giving out food and drink, which I wasn't really, but they thought I was. So all these kids would follow me in my wheelchair. It was remarkable. And once we left Jericho, I was going to a place called Masada, right down by the Dead Sea. 100 odd degrees. It was so warm. It was unbelievable. I was dying of exhaustion in the heat. And all about attitude and perception. Here we go again. I'm on this road. I'm going along this road, and there it is in front of me, a man standing in the middle of the road. And he's wearing a yashmak, a big cover. I couldn't see anything apart from a big grey beard. And I was like, oh my goodness. I had been told in Jericho, do not stop for anyone, for any reason at all. Keep going. So I'm in a wheelchair on my own in the desert. I was petrified. I made assumptions. I thought, oh my goodness, this guy's going to hurt me. And he had his hand in his jacket type thing. And I thought, oh my goodness. So I, in my ignorance, thought, I'm going to speed up. I'm going to go flying past him. He won't be able to shoot me. That was my thought. And as I flew past him, I felt a thud between my legs. Boom. I was like, oh my goodness, what's he done? And I kept going. I didn't look back. I didn't look round. He's shouting something at me and I didn't look back. I thought, can't believe you hurt me. Can't believe. I went about a mile and then I stopped. Guess what he gave me? Won't believe it. Corn on the cob. That gentleman had seen me in Jericho handing out food and water to the children. And that gentleman literally lived in a cave. And what he did was he would walk up and down the Masada Highway to find old vegetables and stuff to feed his family. And that man gave me his dinner. That was one of the most profound things that's probably ever happened to me in my life. So what would you do with a corn on the cob which was filthy, infested with ants? Would you throw it away? I'll tell you what I did. I shaved it all down, made a wee fire, and I cooked the corn, and I ate the corn, and I gave the rusk to the goats. And I finished every bit of that. Because how could I throw away anything from someone who had nothing and they gave me their all? No words to describe that. Just an incredible experience, which, to be honest with you, changed part of my life, the way I thought about things, about me and about other people. And that made me even more determined to do more to help more people. Go forward a wee bit, and I meet a little girl who's 9 years old with cerebral palsy. 2008, a little girl with cerebral palsy. And I'm talking to the classroom in the school. And I'm saying to all the children, okay, guys, what sports do you play? And this, that, and the other were telling me. And this little girl with cerebral palsy said, I don't do sports, I've got cerebral palsy. And I was like, goodness. Well, I said, if there was anything you would like to do, what would you like to do? And she said, I would like to climb a mountain. All right. I said, well, why don't we get that organised? We'll climb a mountain. She said, no, I don't mean me climb a mountain. I want you to climb a mountain. And I was like, you want me to? Can you see me? I'm in a wheelchair. I said, how can I climb a mountain? She said, I want you to climb a mountain and I want you to take my little teddy with you. She's a little wee teddy bear. So I actually took a year, organised a group of people to climb Ben Nevis. Look it up in your National Geographic, whatever. Ben Nevis, the highest mountain in the UK, 4,400 metres high. So I decided, in my wheelchair with a group of guys, we climbed this mountain and we reached the summit in 9 hours, got to the top. We raised well over £100,000, $200,000, really, an incredible amount of money for the day. But I wanted to just tell you this little story. If you can imagine, try and picture this in your mind's eye. So I'm in a wheelchair, 3,500 metres up the mountain. And at this point, I'm on my own. I've told all the climbers to go to the bathroom, you need to go and hide behind a rock, go and do what you need to do. I'm sitting on my own in a wheelchair up a mountain eating a banana. And just at this point, about 3-4 meters in front of me, there's a ledge. And all I hear are two American chaps, two American climbers. And one of them was called Chuck. And he was like, this guy's chatting away. And this guy, I could hear him shouting to the other guy, I think there's a plateau, you need to come here, man, blah, blah, blah. So I'm sitting on my own, eating a banana in a wheelchair up a mountain. And this American chap comes up over the ledge, turns, sees me, and only an American could say, as well, he said, what the fuck? He was like, what the actual fuck? He could not believe that there was a one-legged guy in a wheelchair eating a banana up a mountain. Do you know what he did? He took a picture of his altimeter and then gave me $50. Couldn't believe it. Really good of him. So the point I'm trying to make here is there's so many things that happen to you in your life. And when a bad thing happens to you in your life, don't always assume your life is going to be bad. Do you know what I mean? It's like bad things happen to people, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say that your whole life is going to be bad. One of the things I did after that, believe it or not, is I met a gentleman who was quadriplegic. So from his neck down, he couldn't move. And he asked me, 2008, he asked me, is there any chance you could help me with an event? And I said, certainly, what is it? He kept talking about lots of different things, but he never actually answered. I said, what would you like me to do? He said, I'd like you to use your wheelchair and pull a Boeing 757 aeroplane from your wheelchair. Of course, I thought he was mad. He said, what I need you to do is find 36 men and women in wheelchairs. Well, you know what? I found them. 36 people in wheelchairs at a runway and a big 757 plane. Tied ropes around it. And believe it or not, we eventually pulled at 110 meters. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a Guinness World Record. And that was in the Guinness Book of Records up until 2 years ago. An American group of wheelchair users pulled up an A380. So all I can say is watch this space, because that's coming back to Scotland, frankly. Anyhow, so what I don't want to keep too much of that, but what I would say is one of the things that I love about my life, it's not about the things that I do, it's more about the things I can offer for others. I've spent a long time supporting others to become the best they can be, by helping them to have clubs, etc., etc. And one of the things that I'm really proud of, just 2 or 3 years ago, I don't know if it happens in the States particularly, but I founded and established a power chair football team. So people in electric wheelchairs playing football. And I established the first ever group in Scotland. And that group now competes all over the place, frankly. And it's been quite phenomenal. My job, when I was working in the likes of sports development, one of the most amazing things was to find a young talent, a young person who had a disability. Find that young person, find out what their wants were, find out what their dreams and desires were, and then give them an opportunity to achieve that. I met a young girl with cerebral palsy in primary 5. She was only about 8 or 9 years old, and I was asking the classroom, what type of sport do you all get involved in? So football and tennis and all different kinds of things. And when I asked her, what do you do for sport? Her response was, I don't do sport, I've got cerebral palsy. That shocked me, and what hurt me, I was scared, I was sad for her. So I asked her, what would you like to do? And eventually, I found her a thing called a running bike. Look it up if you can. It's also known as a race runner. That was back in 2010. Today, that young girl is the #1 race runner in the planet. She is the only person in history to have ever received a gold medal in a race running event. And it's now going to be, hopefully, a Paralympic sport. That started off from a tiny little group of people and has flourished. And now there are literally hundreds of thousands of people doing that, or hundreds of thousands of people doing that particular thing. One of the later things that I got involved in, just to kind of close really, was a passion of mine. When I retired, I wanted to do something for myself, I suppose, if I'm being honest. So what I decided was I was going to get a racing license, motor racing license. As a fat one-legged bloke, there aren't that many of us doing that. So I contacted the powers that be, and they were like, oh, I don't know. But eventually, what I did was I applied for my race license, and then I found a cheap car, and we were going to use that. And it was sitting with one of my friends. We were chatting back and forth. And he said, what are you going to do with this race car? I said, I'm going to race it. And then we were chatting about, and then he said, well, he's in a wheelchair. He's like, I'd like a shot. So before we knew it, we put it out on Facebook, and we had loads of people wanting a shot. That has now turned into a national charity called Disability Motorsport Scotland, which I'm a founder of and a trustee. We have had hundreds of people in that car now. We've got one race car at the moment. which I've raced, but more importantly, it's for other people. That has been an absolute eye-opener to me, to see people who don't believe they've got any opportunities. You know, they're not going to get a chance to get involved in things like that, motor racing. Just not last year because of COVID, but the year before, I had one of the most inspirational, one of the most unbelievable days in my life. A lady contacted me and said, I'd like a shot in your race car. I said, absolutely, no problem. Would you like to drive or would you like to be a passenger? She said, I'd like to be a driver. I said, great. I said, to do that, you need to have some form of impairment or disability. I said, do you mind me asking? She said, no. She says, I've got no arms and I've got no legs. I was like, okay. She said, but it's okay. It's okay. I've just had 2 arm transplants. This lady had literally had 2 new arms put on her. She came along, sat in my race car, put it into gear, and all I said to her was, all I want from you is a thumbs up. And she did a thumbs up, and that hand belonged to somebody else. It was unbelievable. And she drove my car, had a blast. I was petrified because she was going so fast. Bearing in mind, she had 2 artificial legs and 2 transplanted arms. But she got that shot, and it was incredible. And I suppose for me, the privilege and honour that I've had in my life has been more about helping others, not about me doing the things I do. And I've been a bit pompous by saying this, but in 2019, I had probably one of the biggest honours bestowed upon me, and that was I became one of the Power 100 list members. That's the most influential people in the UK sit within this group. But what has that done for me? It's not done anything for me. What it's done is allowed me to do more for others. And that ultimately is what it's about. So what is my message here? I know I've been going on quite a bit here, but what is the message? What am I trying to say? If I could close by telling you this, 2 things. One of the most important things I've learned, 2 things I've learned, is dare to be different and be determined to succeed and never give up. Don't try and be like the next person. Don't ever think you're not of a value. Everybody in this planet is of value. Every single person has a place on this earth. Sometimes you don't know where it is. Sometimes you have to go and look for it. Oh, somebody's came in, I think. I don't know what that is. Can you hear me? Oh, I don't know if you can hear me, Ryan, or everybody. Unfortunately, something's happened here. But just to say, to close, really grateful to Abilities Expo for giving me the opportunity to speak, and a massive big thank you to Friendly Shoes for giving me this opportunity. And I hope to do a question and answer soon, so we can have a discussion more about Friendly Shoes and adaptive technology and how that helps us in our day. So bye, everybody. Have a great day, and thank you so much for your help. Bye.
Hey.